Basically, to get behind the Republican Party, you got to tell them lies. Basically, you tell them lies, tell them sweet little lies. I think it was like Fleetwood Mac or whatever it is. Um, but every so often, a Republican pundit drops his guard a little and reveals to the world the incelish inclinations and bitterness toward women that undergird so much conservatard intellectualism. This week it was Manhattan Institute fellow Eric Kaufman with a prolonged whine fest in the National Review about the massive social problem that desirable women apparently don't desire Donald Trump voters, and why would they? The reason why the desirable women don't desire Trump supporters is because the Trump supporters are inbred, they're ugly, they're fat, overweight, and they're unemployed. If you don't have nothing to offer a desirable woman, then they're not going to go out with you. So that's the thing. Kaufman's ostensible point was to warn about the dangers of progressive authoritarianism, supposedly infringing rights to equal treatment or free speech. As many folks pointed out on Twitter, however, the evidence offered of such civil rights violations was centered around the low rates of the non-Trump supporting students willing to date a Trump supporter. The statistic that 87% of all female college students wouldn't date a Trump supporter anyway, and that the claim that Trump sycophants get the short end of the stick anyway. Kaufman inserted a CYA statement up top about how people are free to discriminate in however they wish in dating. But the rest of the essay paints a clear picture of rage that Trump voters are being denied romantic or sexual opportunities. Yeah, because nobody wants them, that's why. But Trump sycophants believe that they should be entitled to date Democratic women is about more than just what one Twitter wag called universal basic intercourse. It's about the ego benefits of having a girlfriend that doesn't result in having their sister or mother. The praise, the respect, the adoration, even feelings that Kaufman knows the women he's scolding do not and cannot authentically feel towards Trump sycophants. It's about entitlement to a woman's flattering lies. And Kaufman's dumb essay is an extreme example, but the grim truth is that such entitlement oozes out of every corner of the conservatard movement. Indeed, the driving force of the modern right is a belief that when they look at the world, they should only see flattering lies reflected back at them, and that anyone who speaks the truth is somehow oppressing them. Last week, the Bullock Texas State History Museum in Austin had a book event that was scheduled with the authors of Forget the Alamo, The Rise and Fall of an American Myth, which exposes an often ignored history about how central white rage at the Mexican ban on slavery was to the Texas Revolution. But upon finding out about the event, the Republican Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick immediately got it canceled, and he bragged on Twitter that this fact-free rewriting of Texas history has no place at the Bob Bullock Museum. Of course, the problem was not that the book is fact-free, but exactly the opposite of it. Patrick's fury is clearly about the authors daring to utter the truth. This is about stomping out historical facts about white supremacy. And what is truly amazing, however, is how unapologetic that Patrick is. He simply feels entitled. He simply feels entitled to scrub unpleasant facts from history or lie about the line to justify his behavior. Patrick has a long history of gleefully stomping on free speech rights in the name of having his prejudice flattered. Just a few months ago, he announced that a top legislative priority would be to pass a law literally forcing sports arenas to play the national anthem, a reaction to the Dallas Mavericks quietly removing the practice from their pregame program. No one actually missed the anthem because people go back to basketball games to have fun, and not to perform half-hearted displays of patriotism that are somehow both needlessly contentious and boring. But Patrick wants to force people to do it, and he's happy to violate the First Amendment rights for a mandatory pantomime of his preferred flavor of patriotism. That attitude is exactly what's driving the nationwide tantrum over critical race theory, based on lies both about the content of critical race theory, which is not actually about hating white people, and whether it's being taught in public schools, which it's not. It's fashionable on the left to mock conservators for not knowing what critical race theory is, but that's not quite what's going on either. Conservators who use the term aren't referencing the academic framework used in graduate programs so much as they're deploying a code for what they actually object to, which is teaching historical facts about racism. It's about demanding that schools set aside the truth in favor of cloying the fables, just as Patrick demanded that the Bullock Museum set aside the truth about the Texas Revolution and fable of a lie-filled story that turns a violent racist tantrum into a heroic act. Trump's former Secretary of State, the fat-ass Mike Pompeo, who has thoughts of a 2024 presidential campaign of his own, embodied his attitude over the weekend launching this tweet. And this is exactly what his tweet said. If we teach that the founding of the United States of America was somehow flawed, it was corrupt, it was racist, that's really dangerous. It strikes at the very foundations of our country. And it's basically remarkable here. What is remarkable here is the blast sense of entitlement to a truly preposterous lie, which is that the founding of America or of any country really could be flawless. That's even before we get to indisputable facts such as the one about slavery being both legal and enshrined in the Constitution, which make the assertion that the U.S. was racist as banal and true as saying that the U.S. is located in North America. But Pompeo's stance is a repudiation of history itself, demand that it be entirely replaced with lies, and worse is his view is increasingly the one that's shared across the Republican Party. No wonder then that Trump's big lie about the 2020 election is so quickly becoming the GOP rallying cry. As a recent analyst from the Washington Post shows, of the nearly 700 Republicans who have already filled paperwork to run in 2022, at least a third have embraced Trump's lie about his defeat. And that's just the ones who repeat the lie. Many, if not most, of the others feel like they can't object to it anyway, unless they face the fate of what happened with Representative Liz Cheney. A similar situation is unfolding with the January 6th insurrection. As Media Matters detailed in a lengthy report of the 6-month anniversary of that event, the right-wing Republican media has spent the past half year spinning out all manner of preposterous narratives to deny that the event was violent or insurrectionary or fascistic. Even though the whole country saw with their own eyes an unbelievable amount of evidence that proves it was all those things eventually. This is particularly encapsulated in the efforts to claim Ashley Babbitt, a rioter who was fatally shot in the Malay, as some kind of victim and martyr, a narrative that Donald Trump has unsurprisingly embraced. Babbitt's shooting was captured on video from multiple angles, making it indisputable that she lost her life because she was leading a mob intent on running down and attacking members of Congress. Yet she is being canonized on the right as proof that they're the ones being oppressed, even after they literally tried to steal a democratic election. Do proponents of the big liar insurrection revisionism actually believe their own nonsense? That's beside the point. Truth simply has no value to these rednecks. All that matters is power, and one way to exert power is to force the official narrative into the shape of a lie untouched by even well-documented facts. In a sense, this is nothing new. The right has long had an interest in replacing facts with its own bellicose myth-making. Evolutionary theory is attacked because conservators would rather imagine themselves in the invisible ferryman's image than as primates. Climate change must be denied because admitting that we should stop driving gas-guzzling pickups and SUVs is too much to bear for the fragile right-wing ego. And heaven forbid anyone should talk about how Martin Luther King had political views beyond that one line in his I Have a Dream speech. But there should be no doubt about these narcissistic tendencies on the Republican side, and they have metastasized into a sense of overwhelming entitlement and need to be swapped into thick blankets of lies such that not even a hint of unpleasant facts can even touch snowflake fragile conservatard egos. And Trump's flagrant personality disorders have operated over the years as a permission slip to a sycophant to emulate his example. As we've seen over and over again, he has petulantly demanded that all information around him be shaped into a flattering mirror, and he believes that no truth is too powerful not to be crushed to suit his overblown, self-inflated ego. Now we are cursed with millions of mini sycophantic Trumps staging tantrums at school boards and CDC ads about vaccines in an endless narcissistic rage that anyone would dare rattle their world by saying stuff just because it's true.